Hey, everybody, and welcome to the UFFS Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Podcast. I don't know, Larry, is this, let's hope it's lucky, number 13, okay?
It is. It's episode number 13 of the UFF Sports official podcast, and looking forward to lots to cover this episode. We got obviously some World Juniors, some NHL news, and a whole lot of news on the hockey platform for UFF Sports. So I almost let it out already, but we may as well. Exciting times ahead.
Exciting times ahead, indeed. Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. It's been a busy another couple of weeks. On the agenda today, the UFHL franchise sales. We'll talk about the UFAHL. Man, that's a mouthful. One of these days, I'm gonna screw that up for sure. But that auction's going on. Big milestone we had take place. Blockchain Andy, shout out to that guy. We'll talk about what happened with the Klein Cup, and lots of loose talk in the world of hockey. Of course, it's, as you say, exciting times ahead. See what I did? I was looking for a Santa hat, and I could not find the stupid thing. And I know it's in the house somewhere, but I wore my Christmas tie. It goes well with my UFFS hoodie, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's a good look, especially being our last podcast before Christmas, and this will also be our last podcast of 2020. So the next time we reconvene, we'll be ringing in the new year for 2021 in that first weekend of January.
Yeah, well, almost everything's been out of the ordinary this year, and it's been kind of a Grinchy type of season. So I thought I'd bring a little Christmas cheer into this, right? So that's what I'm doing here today. So I gotta say, I was just going through Twitter, Larry, and what was kind of interesting is I saw an awesome tweet by, I don't know, it's B at XOXBEA, and she said, "Who's ready to get their heart broken by the Toronto Maple Leafs?" I am. I thought that was hilarious. So you can tell that it's already starting, right? Somebody's ready out there is ready for the NHL season and the Leafs to probably suck again.
Yeah, I think just as soon as that news came out, I guess on Friday or Friday, that there's been speculation for a couple weeks now that we were looking at January 13th as the target start date, and that it was just a matter of dotting the I's and crossing the T's behind the scenes before the NHL made that announcement. But once the announcement sort of came out that that's the official date, the amount of excitement across the hockey world and like I said, across Twitter, social media, people missed hockey and they're ready to have their hearts broken and they're ready to cheer on their team, whether it's from the couch or from the rakes. So most likely from the couch, probably not the local pub even, but wherever they get the chance to cheer them on, they're ready for hockey to return. And it'll give us all that much more to talk about and certainly get some fantasy gameplay going for all of our franchises in the UFHL, as well as get the UFAHL off the ground, which is our brand new AHL-based fantasy hockey league, which is pretty revolutionary and very exciting for everyone that'll be involved in that league.
Yeah, so we'll get back to the loose talk of hockey. I mean, we could get into that now, but let's talk, because I think this is something that's so exciting. I want to start with this today, and it's really the franchise sales in the UFHL. Fish, 3 recent sales. Donnie Talk, of course, purchased the defenders from Miguel, and Miguel was one of the originals, right? Like he goes back right from the original launch of this thing, and Donnie not a stranger to the UFHL either.
Yeah, so you got a nice purchase there within the league, and we've seen that a little bit, whether it's scouts moving on up to become franchise owners, or in this case, Donnie Talk leaving the Rock Republic ownership group. They had a 5-man ownership group as of a couple weeks ago, and now they own 3 franchises instead of 1. So they spread their wings and they purchased up a couple more franchises, including Donnie Talk leaving as general manager of Rock Republic and taking over the Defenders. And he's made I don't want to say a dozen moves, but more than a half dozen moves already in his first week as his own entity, where he's got full autonomy of all the hockey moves and hockey decisions. He doesn't have to pass it by the group discussion. So he's been very active in retooling and rebuilding the Defenders. And like I said, we know Donnie, he's a good hockey mind. He runs a lot of fantasy leagues. He was successful with Rock Republic. Their group took Rock Republic up to 7th in the power rankings, and Donnie took over the 19th ranked Defenders. And he's probably rebuilding them, but you can see some of the pieces he brought in that we're going to be watching at the World Juniors are kids that are the future of the Defenders, and that franchise will be on the rise sooner than later with Donnie in charge as well.
So obviously Donnie, he moved from the wooden chair in the corner to the leather chair behind the nice desk up in the top penthouse office space. So yeah, he was ready for that move, and as you say, he's been really active. The other one is Dylan Wheaton purchased the Blizzard from Christopher Shane. Christopher Shane, another original owner, and Dylan Wheaton, no stranger to UFHL either.
Yeah, again, so Miguel and Christopher are business partners in the real estate world. That's their background, and they launched some new corporations and expanded their real estate business, and it just became too much to maintain the level of dedication and commitment it takes to be successful in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. So they obviously started speaking to members of Rock Republic, and Donnie bought the Defenders, and 24 hours later, Dylan was also leaving Rock Republic and buying the Blizzard. So two friends or acquaintances from Rock Republic have now purchased their own franchises in taking over the two other friends in Defenders and Blizzard. So again, we're not necessarily a new face, but Dylan is new to the Telegram community, and he's sort of, in that sense, a little bit new to UFF Sports. We're just getting to know his personality and that side of it, but he's been a little bit more patient than Donnie. He sort of hasn't made his first big move yet, but I do think we're going to see some moves coming from the Blizzard, and it was a good fit for him. He's a Flames fan first and foremost. The Blizzard are backstopped by Jacob Markstrom, and then he said when we did the Rock Republic profile that he sort of has a soft spot for the Boston Bruins. While Rock Republic and Dylan Wheaton and the boys, they're from Newfoundland, they're from the Maritimes, and Brad Marchand is the face of the franchise for the Blizzard. He was their first pick in the first round of the initial UFHL draft was Brad Marchand. So that was a perfect fit. You get the goalie from your favorite NHL team, and you get one of your sort of homegrown stars in Brad Marchand. So I think that was a great fit for Dylan Wheaton to snatch up the Blizzard when that opportunity presented itself.
Well, I have a special place in my heart for anybody who has any affiliation at all with the Boston Bruins, and of course, the love-hate relationship with Brad Marchand as well. But hey, so yeah, this was really interesting. So you have Christopher and Miguel, who are business partners outside of the UFHL, selling franchises to former business partners within the UFHL of the Rock Republic. It was just an interesting scenario, and these franchises moving from Ontario to Newfoundland. So it was kind of an interesting set of franchise purchases, I thought.
Yeah, it was great the way it worked out. And so that leaves Kyle Roberts now as the primary owner and general manager of Rock Republic. So Kyle will sort of be Donnie's successor there as sort of the figurehead of Rock Republic. And he still has David Brown, who, as we know, Rock Republic's probably the most active on social media and done a lot of graphic design and marketing. And so David Brown's sort of been the behind the scenes guy who does all their Twitter account, their Instagram account, and David Brown is remaining with Rock Republic. And then Paul Easton, who runs Easton Scouting Solutions, which is the scouting agency that owns the most prospects, or certainly the most already drafted, already signed prospects in our scouting among our 40-some scouts. Paul Easton was hired immediately by Donnie to be his assistant GM with the Defenders, but he's also allowed him to continue to represent Rock Republic as an affiliated scout and keep that his scouting agency going and that partnership with Rock Republic. So it's nice how they all parted on good terms, and the Rock Republic guys now have 3 franchises instead of 1 within the UFHL. And with the current division alignment, all 4 franchises from Newfoundland would be head-to-head in the same division, the Diamond Division, which also includes the Ice Vikings, which is the 4th franchise from Newfoundland. So we started off with 1, just the Rock Republic, added the Ice Vikings through the redraft in July, and now we have the Blizzard and Defenders also calling Newfoundland home. So that division, if it remains that way for the 2021 season, there's some talk about potentially realigning divisions, but if the franchises continue forward with the current divisions, the Diamond Division will have 4 franchises from Newfoundland, and you can imagine the rivalries that'll take shape there.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. I hope it stays that way because I like rivalries. And, actually, I was looking through the sticker packs and all the logos and the brands that, that you have behind you. And I really like the Rock Republic's logo. When I was really starting to study that thing, it's a sharp looking logo. So one of my faves, actually.
Yeah, they have 2 really good logos, both their primary and their secondary logo. And they were one of the franchises that had an original logo last January. And they actually went out and hired a graphic designer and said, we want to when we had some of the other new franchises from the redraft were sprucing up their look and coming out with some flashy logos, Rock Republic went and hired their own graphic designer and said, we want to build this brand that much better. And they did a relaunch, a rebrand to come up with the current logo that you see there. So certainly Rock Republic's taking this very seriously, and Kyle's in great shape there with Rock Republic. They had a full protected list. You know, they have a scouting affiliation with one of the top scouts, and so Rock Republic's still in good hands with Kyle, but now they're going to try and build up defenders in Blizzard and see if they can get, like I said, get those playoff rivalries going there in Newfoundland in that division.
You bet. So Kyle, love the logo. Shout out to you, buddy. And a new face. So, you know, we talked for 10 minutes about the 2 franchise sales, but what about this last but not least? Rob Love purchased the Tornadoes from Texan Machen Matthews, another original owner. So welcome Rob to the fold. You know, this guy, Larry, he's a mover and a shaker. Like he's pretty involved in a lot of analytics and different things going on out there.
Yeah, so Rob, he works full-time for Elite Prospects as their business development manager in North America. He's based in Detroit, Michigan, or the greater Detroit area, so Metro Detroit. So the interesting thing with there is that franchise remains in the United States, because we had 4 or 5 franchises based in the United States, most of them in Canada, one in Finland. But it was kind of cool to see that sale go from Texas to Michigan, but stay in the United States. But you're right, certainly Rob is big in the hockey community with his role at Elite Prospects, who certainly you look at our platform and the amount of players we have registered and owned on the UFF Sports platform. They're all right there on Elite Prospects as well. So a nice connection there with Rob, but he's also developed his own, founded his own startup with Fanalytica, which is going to be a fantasy tool that combines scouting, which is perfect for our platform at UFF Sports, with advanced stats and analytics. So analytics and scouting kind of go hand in hand, and he's going to try and bring that to the next level as a tool for fantasy players, both inside the UFHL and outside. And of course, as part of his process, he started off as a scout. Within 24 hours, he was an assistant GM for Strong Island. And by the end of the week, he had taken the full step of purchasing the Tornadoes, which was actually a record-setting sale for the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League at 2,200 Americans. So you look at what franchises were going for back in January and even in July at the redraft. You know, we were selling them for $200 and now we're up to 2,200. So valuations are 10 times. And you look at Rob, you said mover and shaker. He was immediately got his branding done. It looks great with the new Tornadoes logo. And he's been one of the busiest GMs this week as well, putting in the time and getting, again, like Donnie, a half dozen moves or so to really reshape the roster and the protected list for the Tornadoes. So welcome to Rob, and congrats on the rebrand, as well as just everything he's bringing to the table with Fanalytica, the scouting agency too, because he's immediately hiring a scouting agency and bringing in real world prospective scouts to work underneath the agency under his partner, Dan Tinsman. So that's going to be one of the scouting agencies to really keep an eye on in the months to come as well.
Yeah, Rob's absolutely going to be a handy guy to have around. Love the cha-ching of the record-setting franchise auction price, 2,200 American. So it's getting up to, $2,800 Canadian. Cool beans. Hey, that's my new saying, by the way. Chatting to an old friend this morning. She reminded me of an old saying that she always said, cool beans. So you might hear that a lot here, Larry. So you're just going to have to...
Believe it or not, I used to say cool beans once in a while too. So I have heard it. It's not a new saying to me. And maybe we'll start saying cool beans instead of exciting times ahead going forward, because that's become a running joke in the Telegram community and the UFHL is I can't finish a paragraph on the podcast or anywhere else without saying exciting times ahead. So maybe we'll say cool beans instead.
Well, I think exciting times ahead actually fits well, and I could see that being our primary logo, but maybe cool beans could be our secondary logo. How about that?
I like it.
Okay. So to recap a little bit, so we're starting to see more or less, kind of what the vision was, right? Some people might look at this that are newbies to the UFFS platform and see, man, these things are always selling. Are they not happy? No, that was always the vision. If you to increase the valuation of your asset, that being the players within the franchise and the franchise then itself, right? And sell it for a profit. Create asset evaluation through logos, branding, your roster, building up your roster. And these things are going to turn over. And, they might not with everybody, but some guys absolutely are going to sell these franchises for a profit. So that's what we've seen. So if you look at it, and we've seen a lot of activity, right? So since October 19th, we've seen 8 franchise sales, Larry. 8
in 2 months. Eight in 2 months, which was sort of the end of our Klein Cup playoffs, our inaugural Klein Cup. First time we've done the playoffs, as well as the entry auction, our first draft experience. Since then, you can say 8 franchises have sold, and all of them have sold for, close to that 10 times profit from what they originally bought in at. And I think what we're seeing is the new owners, the Rob Loves of the world, and certainly, Donnie and Dylan already having an understanding of the platform, but the new people that have come in as buyers, they're serious fantasy players. They're a little bit, maybe, I don't want to say more invested or more hardcore than the people they're replacing, but in some cases they are, right? They want that high stakes league, that high competitive, the best of the best fantasy players all in one place, where I think at the start, some people were like, oh, a fantasy franchise for $200, why not, right? Like, I like fantasy hockey, but once they seen how intense it was and how this is the best of the best, and how, a lot of these GMs and owners are almost treating it like a part-time job, if not a full-time job. They're almost round the clock working on their fantasy franchise, and that goes from branding to, getting out social media accounts to doing graphic design. And certainly there's more to it than just editing your lineup or setting your lineup and making the odd trade, right? It's a pretty round the clock commitment to be in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League as such a high stakes premier type fantasy sports. And I think some people noticed that and realized that maybe it was going to be a bit much for them. And they've since sold and been happy with the profit they made. And again, the new people who are coming in who are willing to spend $2,200 American dollars on a fantasy franchise that was ranked, number 17 in the power rankings and only had 1 prospect at the time. I think Rob's up to 13 or 14 prospects already now. But the people who are coming into the league, they're willing to, they're treating this as a big investment, and they're willing to spend and to improve that product, as well as put the time and the effort and the money in. So it's becoming more high stakes. And I think the current ownership group is becoming more of a core group now. We're seeing guys that are, I don't think we're going to see a lot more franchises sell in that $2,000 range. I think most people are going to be looking for double that going forward, just because I think the vast majority of the remaining owners are passionate about fantasy sports and passionate about their brand that they've created.
Absolutely. So if we look over the last 2 months, in terms of franchise turnover, Power Players sold Monarchs, Elite Assassins, Dynasty, Vengeance, Defenders, Blizzard, and the Tornadoes. Of course, those last 3 we spoke, quite a bit about here today. So total of about $12,100 Canadian. So really good to see. Great to see that activity. And as you say, serious. In the Telegram chats, I see how serious they are. I see these things, discussions, trades being made at 2, 3 in the morning. And I think, oh my goodness, I don't know how these people even sleep, or maybe they don't. I don't know. It's not for me to question. Do what you got to do. That's what I say. But passion is what drives this thing. So, other things, Fish, that have happened, which is kind of interesting, just around the UFHL, UFFS community, is Ashley Murray finally received the Klein Cup. I don't know if you saw the picture. She looked pretty happy. Didn't look like it was full of any liquid, but.
Well, hopefully those pictures will be coming when she can get her first drink from the Klein Cup. But I do think the Klein Cup looked good on Ashley Murray. She had her Tampa Bay Lightning jersey on, which obviously her father-in-law is Al Murray, assistant general manager and director of scouting with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's a first-time Stanley Cup champion this fall, and she's our inaugural Klein Cup champion. So I like the picture, and hopefully there's more to come. And it was sad to see Ashley go, because she represented the league really well, and certainly had a great showing in the playoff draft with a little help from Al to give her the inside scoop that Steven Stamkos was hurting, definitely not to target him in the draft, and to look at an up-and-coming talent like Miro Heiskanen, who Ashley took in the second round, and he might have been the breakout performer of the NHL playoffs. So certainly having Al in your ear or in your back pocket was handy for Ashley, and that franchise was in great shape. And as far as the hockey world goes, it's kind of cool, because Al Murray obviously had a helping hand with Ashley, but you look at the current ownership group, and they hired general manager Corey Lazar. Well, that name might sound familiar. Brother of Curtis Lazar, who captained Canada to gold at the World Juniors, currently playing for the Buffalo Sabres in the NHL. So an NHL player's brother is now the general manager of the Monarchs after taking over from Ashley Murray, who's the daughter-in-law of an NHL assistant general manager and scouting director. So you just see how serious this league is and how it is attracting real-world hockey people and extensions of those people into play, like I keep saying, the best of the best as far as fantasy sports goes.
You bet, Fish. So hopefully we'll get Ashley maybe on the next podcast. We'll have to bother her around or after the World Junior time, and maybe she'll join us, and maybe we can get her live on the podcast drinking whatever her drink of choice is from the cup. So we'll work on that. You know, I want to do a shout out right now to our new buddy Blockchain Andy. He just did a nice video. You know, he's part of course of the Zalocracy Council and put a nice video together on what the UFFS, UFHL, and he even talked about the UFAHL, which is, you know, hard things to say for me. But he rocked it. He kind of sees a lot of potential behind it. So I want to thank you, Blockchain Andy. Another thing that happened, Larry, was, you know, it was kind of the middle of the month, but December 15th, kind of a special day. Do you know why?
Yeah, I do. It's going to go down in history, or one of the milestones for the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League and the UFF Sports platform. December 15th is the date that we hit 2,000 players registered in the database for UFF Sports, which is a big number. I mean, you look at eliteprospects.com, they have over 800,000 hockey players registered around the world. So 2,000 sounds small, but you look at a normal fantasy league, you're lucky to get 500. Maybe a deep league has 600-700. We're double the size of what normal fantasy leagues would be considered a deep league at. We've doubled that now, and certainly almost 1,000 of those players or so are in the scouting community, which no other fantasy leagues have fantasy scouts who are basically real world scouts looking for the best up and coming talent. No different than NHL scouts are out there looking, or WHL scouts are out there looking. They're looking for the UFHL ultimately, but there's going to be a lot of other leagues in the UFF Sports platform, starting with the UFAHL, where these players are going to develop and come up the ranks and hopefully make it to the UFHL. But great to see number 2,000. And it was kind of a cool story as to who was number 2,000. The player was Sean Day, defenseman who at one point was an exceptional status player into the OHL. There's only been a handful of those players to date. You look at a guy like Shane Wright, who was a big futures buy, was an exceptional status player. Connor McDavid, obviously. Aaron Ekblad. There's a few others. Connor Bedard, the first exceptional status player into the WHL this past year. But Sean Day was one of those exceptional status players who didn't really pan out. Most of them have. He's been sort of the enigma who's been more of a minor league defenseman so far. But the Tampa Bay Lightning of all teams have signed Sean Day for the upcoming season. So perhaps in his mid-20s, he could still get his career on track. But again, worst case scenario, he's probably going to be playing in the UFAHL. And Brian Hernandez and Californication Analytics and Scouting was the agency that added Sean Day. And probably with an eye, a hope that he'll get to the UFHL, but an eye on the UFAHL, knowing that there could be some potential profit there if he ends up playing for the Syracuse Crunch in the coming season, the Tampa Bay's farm team.
So, you know, this is a good segue. Absolutely. So the UFAHL, and for anybody that doesn't know what that stands for, Ultimate Franchise American Hockey League, I think that's what it stands for. You know, I'm so used to calling it UFAHL and never saying the full name that, to be honest, this is probably the first time I've ever said it. The auction is underway right now. It's the new, you know, one of the minor league, you know, platforms that the UFFS has decided to get into. And it's just going to bring a whole lot more exciting things, leasing opportunities, just the intertwining of what the minor leagues bring to the UFHL, right? But as of this recording, it's the franchises are being auctioned off on Air Auctioneer, much the same way that it happened with the UFHL in its beginnings. You put what we would consider a star player up on the block attached to a franchise. You put a bid on that franchise and get that player, and then you get to fill out your roster for free. Well, for your bidding price, I guess, but essentially you get another, whole set of players for free.
Yeah, you'll be able to draft the remainder of your roster, whether we go a 19-player roster or 23 to mirror the UFHL, or perhaps a little smaller roster. That's still to be determined. A lot of the intricacies and logistics are still being worked out, but certainly the first step is sell the franchise players, get the owners together, and then make decisions. But it is exciting that the auctions run through Sunday afternoon, and I guess this afternoon, they'll be wrapping up. You lose track of what day of the week it is sometimes, but this afternoon the auctions will be wrapping up on Air Auctioneer into the evening, and certainly most of the 31 franchises have bids, but there are some players without bids yet that might be feeling a little left out, and certainly there's some bidding wars starting to take shape on some of these. Again, when you look at the 31 franchise players for the UFAHL, a lot of them are sort of, I don't want to say career minor leaguers, but guys that are in their mid to late 20s who primarily played in the AHL. And you look at the AHL scoring leaders from last season, a lot of these names are there. They might not be top NHL prospects, but they're top AHL players, and they're going to be key players for the UFAHL, the fantasy league that we're putting out for the AHL. So I think there's going to be some competition for players tomorrow, but hopefully all 31 players, nobody feels left out. Everybody ends up with a new home, and we can move forward on the planning stages for the UFAHL. And when you said the full name, Ultimate Fantasy American Hockey League, I think we'll probably run with the acronym more often than not, kind of like the ECHL. As we know, the ECHL used to be the East Coast Hockey League, but they merged with the West Coast Hockey League, and they just call it the ECHL. So it's not actually the East Coast anymore. It's just the ECHL. So I think for the UFAHL, we'll probably just go with the acronym for the most part, as opposed to the full mouthful of Ultimate Fantasy American Hockey League. But cool nonetheless that the UFAHL is getting off the ground starting today with the franchise sales wrapping up.
Cool beans, as we would say. So, you look at, you talk about the bidding wars. Sam Annis has the most bids, not the highest, but Sam Annis of the Springfield Thunderbirds, he's already got 4 bids on him. It looks like Californication and the North Stars battling it out on that one last I looked. But the highest bid so far, Kenny Agostino, $95. Kenny with the Marlies, $95.
Yeah, you get the fan base there with Toronto, right? The Toronto market. A lot of people that follow the Leafs also follow the Marlies. So there's going to be some bidding wars there. Actually, the leading bidder at the time of the podcast is a new name to us, Jean-Paul Rosette. He's not currently part of the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, the UFHL, or the community. So it'll be great to meet some new people and that's what we wanted with the UFAHL. Partially, we wanted the farm teams for the UFHL franchises and have another network, like you said, that synergy and intertwinedness between the two leagues for our current UFHL owners. But more so, we wanted to bring in some new blood. And there are a lot of people out there who are more passionate about the AHL than the NHL. There's people that go to, season ticket holders, people that follow the AHL stats and standings closer than they do the NHL. The NHL is more of an afterthought for them. So those are the people the passionate AHL hockey fans that we really want to get involved with the UFAHL. And certainly Jean-Paul Rosette is a new name to me and a leading bidder. So hopefully he'll be able to land a franchise, and we can get to know Jean-Paul a lot better in the weeks to come.
And that's where it's all about community, right? So we want those American Hockey League community-based, passionate people as a part of this. And if that's what he is, then welcome. And I hope he's successful at his bid. And if not on that one, stay close to your screen, John Paul, because I got to tell you, in experience with Air Auctioneer, it comes down to the last minute. Depends on your internet speed. You can get outbid. You really gotta be on top of your game there. I also noticed Fish, the 9 UFAHL franchises were over the starting bid, so of $50. So a few battles out there, not big money, but that's what we expected. And really, if you think about this thing and the minor league, aspect of this, is the way I look at it, Fish, is this: it's a cheap way to get your foot in the door in this exciting platform. It's something really innovative and something brand new. This thing hasn't really ever been done before. So you're not sure, do you want to spend big money? How involved do you want to get? This is a good way to get your foot in the door and just learn a little bit about the community. And if you don't want to own a franchise, we need general managers. We always need good general managers, right?
That's a great point. There's going to be a number of these franchises, UFAHL franchises, are going to be purchased by our current UFHL franchise owners and GMs. And they're too busy focused on the UFHL, much like the NHL GMs do their own thing in the NHL and they hire AHL general managers to work underneath them. So certainly the opportunities for AHL GMs are going to be plentiful. There's a handful of franchises I know currently seeking GMs for the UFAHL. So if you follow the AHL closely, you know all the players on all the teams. Again, this is a deep league. This is pretty much every AHL player is going to be on this platform following the UFAHL draft, regardless of how many rounds we go. The roster size, there's 31 franchises, and the roster sizes are going to be fairly close, if not identical, to the AHL. So you're going to have to know almost every AHL player, but certainly the passionate people that could help bring revenue for these franchises and profit themselves would be the people that know the most about the AHL. But like you said, there's nine franchises over the minimum bid, but more so than profiting from the franchise sales, the founder's vision was just growing the platform downward first with the minor leagues and the junior leagues, and eventually upwards with the Legends League, but really to grow the hockey platform. And so that all these, only 750 players are in the NHL at any given time. So the other, out of the 2,000 players, you got 1,300 players essentially that aren't playing on the UFF Sports platform right now. They're just sitting there. We want to get those leagues up and running so all those players have a fantasy element, a place to play on their way to the UFHL, just the way it works in the real world. So the UFAHL will certainly be a stepping stone for those players, and as well for the GMs. You come in and you have a strong showing in the AHL, perhaps you're in line for an NHL job, a GM job that opens up just like it would in the real world. A lot of the NHL franchises hire from the AHL because that's sort of the stepping stone. So I think we're going to see much the same between the two leagues, both with players and with staff going back and forth between the leagues.
Yeah, it's a resume builder. Exactly. That's precisely what it is. So, if we talk about the UFAHL franchise auction that's currently underway on Air Auctioneer, it's airauctioneer.com for anybody that's never heard of it before, in case we have some newbies, joining us here on whatever social media platform you're seeing this podcast on, and welcome to our podcast. But what's the best way if they might have a few questions, they want the link, Larry, what's the best way to get a hold of somebody?
Yeah, so on Twitter, on Facebook, we've been sharing the link to the actual Air Auctioneer auctions as much as possible for the UFAHL. So if you come to UFF Sports or UFH League on Twitter, those two handles, you'll see the link for the AHL auctions. You'll see a link as well to our Telegram community, which we got over 120 members in the Telegram community now, and that's kind of a place to come and hang out and learn. And you could talk real world hockey, but certainly lots of fantasy hockey talk as well. So a great little community there. And as we were saying earlier, one thing is, I run a couple other fantasy leagues, and now that the NHL is getting going again, we have to get those up and running, my personal leagues. But between last March and now, they've pretty much been idle or dormant. There hasn't been much trades, much chatter on the message boards. There's never a dull moment in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. Every day something's happening. Certainly with the scouting platform, scouting program keeps excitement, keeps new players coming onto the platform, and then always some trades. When you get an ownership turnover, like we've talked about, the new owner wants to put their mark on the franchise, on the roster. So it's constant. There's always something happening. Like I said, never a dull moment. So certainly you can track down the auction link on Twitter, on Facebook, and also the Telegram link, and come join the community that we're building, the hockey ecosystem.
Yeah, so as you say, you mentioned again the NHL and the excitement building as perhaps getting underway. We could probably talk a little bit about that. Modified NHL I guess the NHL is looking to play a modified schedule is the way to put it, starting, I think, January 13th. What we don't know is if the Canadian teams are even going to be playing in Canada. This is the big discussion point right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, it comes down to the health authorities, whether or not if they need a bubble environment again. And actually, I've heard that as the most recent thing, that they may just because they've planned a schedule now with the all Canadian division, they don't really want to scrap that. So they may stay with the all Canadian division and put all 7 in a bubble, like they did with the playoffs in Edmonton or Toronto. And that would be easily doable. They just replicate what they've already done for the playoffs with half as many teams, right? There was 24 teams in the playoffs, only 7 Canadian teams. So they could pull that off quite easily. But again, just with certain regulations with the health authorities, there's also been the talk that they may have to relocate the Canadian franchises below the border and have them play out of American markets. Again, especially if there's no fans, it won't really make a difference. Your local fans aren't going to be able to be there anyway. So there's the possibility that Canadian franchises will be playing out of U.S. markets. And there's also the possibility that they'll do a bubble within Canada. But I think because they built the schedule around an all-Canadian division, they would really have to go back to the drawing board between now and January 13th and redo the divisions and the whole schedule if they scrap that all-Canadian division. So I think we're going to see an all-Canadian division one way or another. It's just a matter of whether the NHL franchises are playing in their home city, in a bubble city, or perhaps across the border in a U.S. market away from home, playing out of a road city.
Well, I really hope they do the bubble format, at least in Canada. So, if restrictions are lifted or anything gets better for whatever reason, then they're already existing in the Canadian marketplace. And if they could start to allow people in, to a limited fashion, that they could just open up the doors. But if they're transplanted in the US, man, I don't see this as a good thing. And I know there's a lot of dissension. I read in the paper today that some of the players are saying, oh, great, we have to be away from our loved ones for an extended period of time again. And more expenses too, when money's already tight, right, over the last year. So yeah, I can see that there's a lot of discussions taking place.
Yeah. No, we have a lot of logistics we're working out in the UFHL and will be with the UFAHL because the AHL season is still very much up in the air, tentatively starting February 5th. But again, they need fan revenue and or funding from somewhere in order for that to happen. So there's a lot of logistics at play in both leagues. But just the fact we're hearing that, the optimism that hockey is coming back, the puck is dropping on January 13th. Our next podcast on, January 3rd, January 4th, we're going to be a week to 10 days out. Training camps will be opening that weekend. The January 3rd weekend is sort of the day that NHL training camps will open. So just the excitement of the hope and the excitement that we're going to have hockey back. And again, with that comes fantasy gameplay, which we've had never a dull moment. You almost forget that there's not hockey happening with all the trades and the scouts signing 1,000 prospects, 10 a day or whatever, all these new players coming on the platform. It feels like hockey's going, but the reality is there hasn't been any actual gameplay for the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. And for 10 of the franchises have never had gameplay because they weren't part of the league back on March 12th when COVID shut down the NHL. So it'll be a lot of fun just to see how these power rankings stack up when the puck drops on January 13th and all these new moves we've seen since the December 1st power rankings with the Defenders and the Tornadoes and Dynasty. Let's see how these franchises actually do when their lineups get a chance to have counting stats and record fantasy points.
I guess, we'll find out if all these transactions and, chatter and things that have been going on are going to be enough to kick the Grizzlies out of the top spot as they won the inaugural regular season last year. So, the NHL, yeah, we talked about that, looks promising to be up and running. I'm not going to jinx anything. This is lucky podcast number 13, but, closer is the World Juniors. So a lot of talk about that. Supposed to begin Christmas Day. Here's the funny thing, and you and I were talking about this in the setup to this podcast too, is, I don't usually feel sorry for the Germans, but I feel sorry for the Germans. I'm just going to put that out there. I do. Yeah,
because they were, Germany arrived in Canada and 8 of their players tested positive for COVID. So the entire German World Junior team has to be in quarantine until Christmas Eve. And they get out, they might have one practice and boom, they're right into their tournament opener. And they are Canada's first opponent on Boxing Day as well. And as we know, with the NHL season, although some players like Alexis Lafreniere weren't loaned back to the World Juniors, but guys like Kirby Dach, Bowen Byram, Dylan Cousins, those guys are at the World Juniors where normally they would be NHL rookies 2 months into their NHL rookie season already. So we're seeing a lot of NHL caliber talent at this tournament. And you're right. You do feel sorry for the Germans. They have Tim Stützle, who's going to be the 3rd overall pick for the Ottawa Senators and going to be one of their go-to guys sooner than later, sort of a face of the franchise in Ottawa. He's on that German World Junior team, as are JJ Peterka and Lucas Reichel, 2 more top prospects that were high picks in our entry auction or high purchases there. And a lot of interest on this German team, but they're coming in a tough spot just with COVID kind of hitting their team as they landed in Canada and the forced quarantine situation. But hopefully all their key players come out of that and are part of the tournament, and hopefully they can make a little noise, because just the way they played at last year's tournament and the fact all those young players are a year older, this could have been Germany's year to pull an upset like we've seen out of Switzerland in recent years. I think Germany could have, been knocking on the door for an upset in the quarterfinals, maybe squeak into the semifinals. But like I said, the powerhouses are loaded because of the no NHL season. The majority of players were loaned to their countries to represent at the World Juniors, and we're going to see a lot of future NHL stars, more so than normal at this tournament.
Yeah, that's a great thing to see. And this is one of my staples over the Christmas holidays. I always watch the World Juniors. So I really hope this thing goes and gets off the ground. But yeah, the poor Germans, no exhibition play, no training, no on ice training, as far as I know, until basically the morning that they play their first game. Then their second game is against Canada, and Canada's, well, usually should be a powerhouse, right? So any big predictions there, Fish? Because that all the scouts out there are going to be watching what you predict here. So it doesn't really matter what I say, because I really have no idea. But what are your predictions? First, second, and third? Gold, silver, bronze?
Yeah. So the cool thing is Harrison Miller is actually taking it upon himself to run the World Junior prediction pool or picks pool within the UFHL community and UFF Sports platform on Telegram. He set up a prediction thing where you can predict gold, silver, bronze, as well as the tournament MVP as sort of the tiebreaker. I think you also predict the score of the championship game in that pool. But for me, heading into the tournament, especially because there's not going to be a lot of exhibition play and stuff, there will be a couple games. But I look at Canada on paper. The goaltending's the big question mark, but you look at their defense and you look at their forwards. 20 out of 22 skaters are first-round NHL draft picks. Every single forward on Canada's roster is a first-round NHL draft pick. I just can't see how that team can't perform up to expectations and up to their potential. That is the team to beat for gold. So I do think, especially with a guy like Kirby Dach, who spent all of last season in the NHL leading the way for Canada as their captain, and even though it's no fans, they still are playing in Canada, in Edmonton. I think Canada's the team to beat. I'll go Canada gold. If there's a team to knock off Canada, I think it's Russia. I think Canada's goaltending's a little suspect, but for me, Russia's defense is sort of their weakness. Russia has a lot of high-powered forwards, and the one thing Russia has is the best goaltender in the tournament, Yaroslav Askarov. Some people will take me to task on that. Some people like Spencer Knight of the United States, potentially the young guy, Hugo Elmefelt, or Jesper Wallstedt, the 2 Swedish goaltenders, Wallstedt being the younger guy, Elmefelt being the older guy. But there's some really high-end goaltenders in this tournament. Canada doesn't have one. Russia has the best one in Yaroslav Askarov. So if there's a team to knock off Canada in that gold medal game, I think it's Yaroslav Askarov and the Russians. So I'm going to go Russia silver, losing to Canada in the gold medal game. And for bronze, I'm going to take the United States, backstopped by Spencer Knight, to defeat Sweden in the bronze medal game. And I honestly would have had Sweden likely winning bronze or possibly even higher, but they were the team that prior to coming to Canada was hit hardest by COVID. They lost arguably their top 2 centers in Carl Henriksen and another young prospect in William Eklund, who would have been a potential breakout player at the World Juniors. So I look at Sweden being hit hard by COVID, and I think the U.S. lost, a handful of players to COVID during their lead up as well. But the U.S. is still maybe a little bit deeper up front than Sweden, and Sweden a little bit better on the blue line. Goaltending pretty similar. So that bronze medal game, if it's Sweden USA, is going to be great too. But I do see, sort of like we said, the powerhouses, the perennial powers making it to the medal round. Canada over Russia for gold. So Canada gold, Russia silver, and then I'll take the United States for bronze.
Okay, so Canada gold, Russia silver, States for bronze, Sweden an honorable mention. I'm going to hold you to it there, Fish. I'm not even going to make a prediction. There's no point. I'll just go with what you said. It's safer. So
looking forward to it. It's gonna be a fun tournament. Again, like you said, the World Juniors is always such a big thing at Christmas and the holiday season, and certainly for scouts such as myself, that's when you're looking at NHL draft talent. Usually, the top prospects are part of this tournament, and it's one of the showcases we keep a close eye on. So, and luckily, it's in Canada, so we don't have any middle of the night or super early morning games. It's all prime time. So, I'll be glued to the television as much as possible for those 2 weeks.
Me too. So speaking of scouts and all things scouting and I guess drafts, talk about the Bantam draft. Even this whole COVID situation has even rescheduled the WHL Bantam draft, which actually makes a lot of sense because you being a scout, you would know that you want to properly be able to evaluate players. And with the whole mess that's going on, probably not a great opportunity to do it so far, right?
Yeah, and that impacts our futures auction as well, because our futures auction in the UFHL for our scouts is that WHL Bantam draft class. That age group are the 3 years out from their NHL draft, are the kids that our scouts are following as well. So it is delayed. And one thing I think that we could see happen there, the OHL and the QMJHL, the other two leagues under the Canadian Hockey League, they draft kids a year older. So they do their draft at 15 turning 16 instead of 14 turning 15. So it makes sense for the WHL to align with what the OHL and the QMJHL do for their draft rather than be a year ahead. So I think that's what we'll see in the WHL going forward. And especially, again, because we've lost so much of the minor hockey season, the academies, the Bantam, the big Bantam tournaments, obviously, you have the Max in Calgary for the midgets, but you have John Reed and a bunch of these other big-time Bantam tournaments are usually happening in December and in January, and we're going to miss all those main events that scouts really zero in on to see who the next big Bantam players are. And again, we know some of these kids from a couple years out. A guy like Berkeley Catton there in Saskatoon, he's on a star-studded midget AAA Saskatoon Contacts team. He's probably going to be the first overall pick as an exceptional status player. Same thing as Connor Bedard. I think we'll see him get exceptional status and be one of the main guys in that Bantam draft. But certainly I think it makes sense to align with the OHL and the QMJHL and get all those prospects drafted at the same age, which would bump them back a year, which would add a little bit more challenge to our scouts to find them. They'd be scouting them the same time the WHL teams would be scouting them. So find that talent before the WHL feeds it to you. So it's going to be very interesting how the WHL Bantam draft decisions impact our UFHL futures auction for our scouts going into the summer months.
Well, the founders and yourself, Fish, that we're always working behind the scenes to try and figure out how things are supposed to flow with everything being so dynamic and fluid and changing almost on a daily and weekly basis. But you know what? We got this far. So it's, and it wouldn't be without, our franchise owners, obviously the general managers, the fantastic scouts. It's just amazing the treasures that they find out there. You like to send out some little treats and tidbits every now and then that they pick up on or they don't. Harrison doing his thing. It's a fantastic community, and it's just a lot of fun to be a part of. So other than that, I don't think there's too much else to discuss on today's podcast. I don't think I'm missing anything. Please tell me now if I am, because you never know. My brain's getting a little bit old here.
Yeah, no, I think we covered all the bases. Like I said, the UFAHL auctions wrapping up later today, this afternoon, this evening. That's the big thing that people are listening and interested in, like I said, getting a foot in the door for this platform. It's a small investment at $50 to potentially have your own franchise. And it doesn't take much to turn a profit there. As we were talking, again, in the setup to this podcast, all you need to do is sell 2 of your players to a UFHL franchise. You're going to draft 15, 20 players, whatever that number is. If 2 of them make it to the UFHL and you own those 2 players for $50, the minimum a UFHL franchise can pay is $25. So 2 players, you've already broke even on your investment. So, and as this grows, all those numbers, what franchises in the UFHL are willing to pay continues to go up. So great way to get your foot in the door at sort of the entry level, the beta version for the UFAHL, and kind of grow with that league and grow with the entire platform.
Absolutely. Yeah. An opportunity to turn a profit on your asset and at the same time have some fun, work on a logo, a brand, and play for some cash at the end of the day, just as part of a fantasy league, right? That's the way I look at it. So I want to, we might talk on a 2-Minute Tuesday before Christmas, but I want to wish you and your family a healthy, safe, Merry Christmas, and all the best in the new year, because we probably won't talk on the next podcast until 2021, hoping it's going to be a better year. And, to everybody out there as well, a very Merry Christmas, safe and happy holiday season.
Nope, same. That's good to, hopefully there's Darren showing off the tie, but yeah, it's great to be heading into Christmas on an optimistic, promising note, like you said, Darren, with the fact that hopefully hockey's coming back. Hockey's always a big part of the holidays for a lot of Canadian families, a lot of families around the world. So enjoy the holidays, and hopefully we're playing hockey shortly after our next podcast, or in the lead up to our next podcast.
Cool beans. And there I am showing off my Christmas spirit, my Christmas tie, as we sign off on podcast lucky number 13 for the UFFS official podcast, where you own the game.